Hey everyone, today I'm joined by two familiar guests, Larry Mazza and Anthony Hootie Russo. Larry was a made man for the Colombo crime family, and Anthony was an associate of the Gambino crime family. Today we're going to be talking about the Gambinos and Colombo family, dealings that they did, business ventures, and so on. So without further ado, let's get into it. Thanks for coming on, Larry and Hootie. How you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for inviting me again.
Yeah,
Hi,
always,
Hootie.
man.
How are you?
Good, good. Any day on this side of the world is a good day for me.
I hear you.
I wanted to talk about too as well. What kind of dealings went on with the Gambinos and the Colombos? For like business wise, like what we were talking about before we,
Well,
kind of went on.
I'll start if it's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
What I know of it, and then Hootie can say what he does. On a very high end, they're all mingling in the concrete and the windows and the unions. They're all sharing that amongst the bosses. Okay. We're never going to see any of that on our level. But I was in the street making money, so I had built a big sports business. And I was known as the Lefty Rosenthal of the Colombo family. That's how big it got at a young age. Guys would ask me for winners. And to this day, I still get phone calls and I'm still working as a consultant in that industry. But we would deal with every family, numerous guys, other bookmakers, other guys from other families betting with us. That went on. So there was always intermingling. Work like hits, I can't say I don't know of any time that they got together to do hits. As a matter of fact, during all war, it's a fact that Vic Arena went to John Gotti for help to get Greg and his crew. And at first, the family his side was okay with that until I believe it was Joe Scopo that said, that's an embarrassment. We'll take care of our own business. But Vic was getting so panicky that he went for help. So it normally wouldn't happen for that reason. It makes you look weak. You're not going to go to another family for help. And if somebody's got to go in our family, we're going to do it. You can't get involved. I mean, that's what I grew up knowing and learning.
That's a great story because that's one of the ones that I heard. Because as you know, Joey Scopo was a legend in my neighborhood. When I was a kid. Joey Scopo had a social club on 101st Avenue, and he grew up with the Gottis. He grew up with the Tony Roaches when he came home from jail. Not Vic, but Joey Scopo was best friends with Jeannie, best friends with Johnny, best friends with Angelo. So if there was anybody that would go to them for help, it would be little Joey Scopo. But it's an embarrassment to do that, and Vic went behind his back and did it. Because if there's anybody that was going to do it, it would have been Joey to go there, which, of course, John at the time was backing them without backing them because what happens? John never gets voted in as Capo de Tutti Capo. So if he backs the Arena faction, he gets Joey Scopo as an underboss. Vic remembers him helping because he's, him and all his brothers, they grew up together in the streets with Joey. And then Joe Messina at the time is looking to change the name from the Bonanno family to the Messina crime family. So then he gets Messina in his corner, and he's got Joey Scopo, and he's got the Arena faction because Vic would have been boss, Joey would have been underboss, and then it's 3-2, and John rises to the top and finally gets the position that he always wanted.
Right. That was his. You're right. The one thing I'm going to add is, and I know this pretty much also for a fact, to an extent, I shouldn't say for a fact, but a lot of Vic would have been killed, and Joe would have became the boss.
Gone.
Then it was the scenario.
Gone.
That's what we
Gone.
heard from. Right. So you're right. He wanted Joey as his second vote on the commission for sure.
As soon as they would have went at the power, they would have started giving out the money, the Shylock, and who gets this, who gets that. Vic would have been gone. Joey would have rose to the top, and the Gambino family would have ran the whole commission. 100% correct. That was spoken about for years after.
He wanted to be Carlo again.
Yeah, that's what John wanted.
He's the last boss of all boss. He's the last.
He was the last. Yeah, and some people say, which I never heard, and I've sat with captains in my own family, that Paul was voted Capo de Tutti Capo after Carlo died. Now I don't know how true that was because I was privy to a lot of sit downs, but I definitely was never privy to a boss sit down
Right.
where they make a vote.
Tell you something. My argument is this: I can't believe that the majority of the family didn't like or wasn't behind the direction Paul was going in. What's wrong with getting into huge, big, legitimate businesses? You got all this money. Why not own the biggest concrete companies? Why not own, 200 car wash at a print money? Why? That was the direction you wanted to go in. And really, when this whole thing started 100 years ago, that was the game plan. It was a stepping stone to make the Italians at the time, who were having troubles, just like the Irish did, just like the Blacks did, everybody had their problems, where we could better things for our kids. I don't mean me, I'm way past that. But when it first started, it was a stepping stone. You didn't want your kids getting in this life. You did it so they didn't have to. It got so lucrative that everybody brought their kids in to protect themselves. If I go to jail, you take over. And it became,
Greedy.
Within a family.
They needed somebody that they could trust to watch all the money that they made.
Right.
They thought it'd get taken away if they didn't bring somebody in. Like a lot of guys brought their nephews in, like how Teddy rose a lot quicker because Alley Boy went away, but then Teddy wound up doing so much time. But I think, listen, Larry, I think they all wanted to go in that direction. But the Gotti clan had a reputation for taking guys out and bodies disappearing. You got to remember, the Bananos were whacking guys. Go look at Sal was bringing the bodies to the Gambino family, and it was Gotti's crew that was getting rid of them. And then he had the arena side, which was the Ozone Park and Long Island side. Mm-hmm. He had all of these moving parts that were working in his favor. That maybe a guy like Joe Watts that was making $20 million a year was kind of like, yeah, I do want to go to the direction Paul's going in, but what about this guy? And then we all know Daniel Marino never held back any punches to this day. Went against everything that John wanted. Didn't like the fact that he was at the sit down that Paul got whacked at. That he was the one that was called the Spark Steakhouse. He was one of the guys that was inside when Paul got hit that night, and he was all about that Wall Street, the parking garages, the cement companies, and so was Sammy, and the rest of the Manhattan guys were.
There were a lot of guys. That's what I'm saying. There's a smaller group, and they're the ones that were the vultures or the real killers that wanted to stay with drugs and all those street level things. Here, if I'm in the life and I become real successful, all right, and all this money I'm making in sports, I can open a great restaurant, or like I said, a string of car washes, or buy parking garages. Then I wouldn't mind my son staying with me and following me. He can run the funeral parlors, but it didn't get that way. If you were in drugs or Shylock and you brought your kid in to protect that, $5 million a year, $2 million a year, it's greed.
That just happened to be the crew that I was with. That's what they want.
My argument always was they killed Paul because he was trying to go legit.
Nah, it was the tapes. It was all about the tapes.
But a lot of people say that. That was John putting it out there. He forgot about guys. He wanted to be a businessman. There's nothing wrong with that.
Let's not forget, even in your family, you got two guys that are straightened out that are probably worth about $100 million now that own a certain business legitimately. No, I mean, just the last time I checked when I was in the streets, they were probably worth about $100 million at the time. And these guys were in social club guys. You know what I'm talking about? Car guys.
They're billionaires today.
Right, whatever it is. But these were legitimate guys that were making legitimate money. And as we all know, the Colombo family wasn't known for money. You had that local, but you guys were so small. You were the smallest family when it came down to head count. But you had guys like that.
Good fellas.
Right. But you had guys that were worth a couple $100 million during the war. Yep. As there's Roseanne Scotto's father, who supposedly is a high-ranking Gambino captain as we speak.
Yeah.
And never spent the day in the street. They own that Fresco by Scotto. They own restaurants. They own a lot of stuff on the waterfront with the Genovese family. So there's a lot of guys that legitimately, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, they said Danny Marino was worth legitimately $30-40 million. Right. Forget about his street money.
Right. Yeah,
Damn.
and some of these guys got that button just to protect their interests. They were known as a white, and that's
Protect it, yeah, their kids.
They actually paid for their button. Literally
Yeah,
paid.
he bought his fucking button.
And that's what I was going to ask you guys.
understand.
I was going to say,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I
was just going to say, do earners, are they more important to the family than a made man?
They're all important.
They all play their role. They all got their role to play. I can't say that one is more important than the other.
Right.
One's usually there to protect the other. So how I came up as a bookmaker. That's how I was brought in. I was brought in at 14 years old. I was answering phones at an office at a satellite office that had to do with Nicky Carrazzo, but Nicky Carrazzo didn't know I worked for him. Getting back to those guys, they made their kids go legit. Jojo, both his sons were lawyers. You know what I mean? Why not? So there's guys that did do that. But so I came up that way, and I learned the business. And I had, he had no idea I was working for him. He had no idea that, he had no idea I was working for him. I had no idea that I was working for him or anybody else for that matter. And they taught me the ropes. And that's how I was brought in. And it was bookmaking, Shylocking, and I got to deal with other families, with other guys within other crews, with never knowing or having a clue who the next person was that I was giving the money to, or where it was going, or if I took action at a certain bar, 50% of that action had to go to the Bananas. 50% of that action had to go to the Gambinos, as did when I got older and the guys in my crew got involved in strip clubs. It happened to be the strip clubs they got involved in. The girls belonged to the Bananas, but the guys that ran the bar belonged to the Gambinos. So we had to split them.
So what Hootie, so going on to you, I mean, what dealings did you have with the Colombo family? Besides, that you were talking about right now, did you have any others?
I was very tight with a lot of the Colombo guys. I remember when I was looking for work and I was part of Local 79, and they had grandfathered in for years and years and years, generations. They had local, was it 7A or 6A, the concrete union? And they offered me a position. And usually if you're not with that crew or with that family, that doesn't happen. And I wind up making a lot of friends with them. And I wind up selling drugs with a lot of them. And I got close with one of them in jail at the time, who was Frankie Blue Eyes. He was a Colombo guy that used to put a lot of work in them. He was a handout, he was a shooter. And he was, Uncle Teddy's attack dog. And over the years, it was hard not to. Again, when you grow up in these neighborhoods and your neighbor's this person and your neighbor's that person, and Carmine Cesar, who was very well known throughout Brooklyn, driving around during the war like there was nothing going on, was very well known. And there was, cousins and nephews, and it was hard not to miss. And we had a very powerful captain in my neighborhood who ran like all the sports and little leagues, and I had kids and god kids, and my kids all played in that. And, if I missed deadline, he'd take care of me. He'd make sure he always put my name on the list. And I'd give him football sheet money, meaning they used to have sheets. I don't know if they still do it. And, 3 out of 3, you get 10 to 1, 5 out of 5, yeah. Guys get 12 out of 12. So I know guys that were millionaires off of doing football sheets. And that's how I actually started making money, was with football sheets. And I taught him 25% of a football sheet for a whole season of football season, and things like that. And it was if the captain and my crew found out, I'd have to ask for forgiveness because I would never ask for permission. I'd be mad at first, throw him a little something extra to be forgotten about because they didn't like that. Maybe they had a hard on for that part of the Colombo family.
Right.
Then you got to remember, I got along very well with Tall Guy. Now, Tall Guy, there's 2 of them. One was a Gambino, and the other one wound up becoming a Colombo because supposedly Sammy had his father whacked. Eddie, Tall Guy Eddie. One was a Gambino, and his father, they were the concrete guys. He wound up opening a trucking company, and he employed all of the Colombos. And he was a stand-up guy, and he was a tough guy. And I got along very well with him. We had a poker game together. We played poker all the time. We played Texas Hold'em. And so things like that. It's hard not to, if like I run out of my house and I throw a rock. I'm going to hit somebody from the other four families in the head with it. You know, it's just the way
Yeah.
it was where I grew up.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you guys this too. I mean, so was there any wars like that the Gambino family ever had with any of the other families, or an internal war?
Well, I don't know if they had internal wars. Hootie would know better than me about the Gambinos.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're rumbling.
Guys got clipped. There was no wars. Guys got clipped. There was never a civil war. Guys that didn't like guys got clipped. That, you know, then other guys got mad about it, put a beef in. But at the end of the day, the Gottis ran that whole family, so it didn't matter.
In our
So-
time, there's never been two families going against each other. The last
No.
time I think that happened, the Bananos might have had problems with some of the other families, and they were open game for a while. Go back further, you know, you see it all on TV. You know, the wars that were happening between
Oh yeah,
Lucchese
the mozzarella wars.
and Genevieve, all of that.
Oh yeah, well, but that was more. That was Lucky Luciano. So that was the Luciano family and the Genovese family that had the war, right? And then it was the Bafacci family and the Colombo family, right? Like kind of
the Profacis were the Colombo.
right, but didn't it how it got settled why it became the Colombo family? Because Joe Bafacci and Joe Colombo went to war?
Joe Gallo. It was Joe Gallo first.
Well, he won the war, right? And that's why he thought that when he went to jail, he should have came home to it.
Was the one that was most open against Profaci. And he started the problem. That's where there was a split. And Junior Persico, Greg, they stayed with Profaci. And some other guys went the other way, guys that are still around, and, you know, eventually all came back together. So and this is a story that Greg told me. So Joe Gallo had this war with Profaci first. When Joe Gallo got hit, and then ultimately Profaci died, that was how Colombo came around. Joe Colombo, and then he got shot, of course. And
Didn't a lot have to do with Carmine the Snake catching him in Brownsville, the brother Larry?
Yeah, he choked him or whatever, right?
Yeah. I mean,
And that's the scene that they used in The Godfather.
Yep. That's a true scene. Yes, it is. You know,
And-
so and then ultimately, that's what I'm saying. Then, you know, after Colombo, there was rumblings. I know Video Loy had it for a while. There was a guy named Iacovelli had it for a while. There was a commission. There was ultimately Junior got it. I don't know exactly how, but he was voted in or fought his way in. He probably did fight his way in because he was in shootouts. He got shot, and you know, and
he was tough with his hands, right? He was a boxer, Junior, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know too much about him personally. Like I said, I was in his presence once, and I didn't even. I said hello, and I had to walk off to the side for him and Greg to talk. And he was only out of prison for like 2 years the whole time I was around. So, you know, it's hard to really talk about a guy. I just know you guys. We read.
Just one. I've always had a question, Larry, and we spoke many a times. I actually thought we had like one of the best interviews ever when we talked about the last living guy that put the shot in Joe Gallo. Were you ever around when they made the structure for because, you know, listen, there's the rules of the commission for organized crime, and then each family has their own rules that you got to obey by. And every family has that one rule that if you break, it's punishable by death. And I heard that the Colombos was, if you steal from the Colombo family, there's no second chance. The punishment's death. Now, I don't know how true that is.
Yeah.
It's just something I heard along.
Well, I don't, I don't know that I can't say that's not true because I do know guys that got clipped for stealing. I know that. But I got to believe that would happen in all the families. If you steal
There's punishment. There's punishments.
Well, let me ask you a question. You think, let's just use, we'll say John Gotti. If somebody was stealing from him, you think he's going to let that go?
No.
Maybe
No, but there was punishments for it. There was punishments for it, right? You probably get beat for a minute of your life. You get shelved, and if you didn't have a big earn, you had to go out and get a big earn, and you'd be paying for the rest of your life. Because there's times that things like that have happened.
Yeah, I don't think nobody ever told me that as a rule before.
You know,
or
like
night Joe was bringing us into this thing.
Yeah.
Joe T. That was never said. but it's almost a given because I've seen guys that were robbing from Greg get killed. You know.
Well, there was a guy that was very close to Greg that told this story to a friend of mine.
Yeah,
That Carmine made the rule. So I don't know, like I said, how true it would have been.
Yeah.
Because listen, Joe Messina had the rule: if you said his name, you got clipped. That was a rule. You couldn't say Joe's name. If you got caught in a club or on tape,
like
you had to go like this.
Yeah.
You mentioned 84th Street. You go like this. You know, so we were actually talking about things like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, skipping over something that I forgot that I was getting to before, Adrian, that we skipped. When I was coming up in Hester Street at my mother's uncle's club as a kid, these old timers are probably 120 now. They used to straighten guys out to watch the bookmakers. See, the Jewish heritage started the bookmaking business. So, and they would work for organized crime. And you could go back as far as where the Purple Gang and, you know, they worked for themselves. But if you were a bookmaker working out of a tailor shop in the garment district, or most of the time it was a Jewish guy that was loaning the money out, or a Jewish guy that was taking the bet. And what they would do was a captain had too much stocks, shakedowns, concrete, that they had to straighten associates out to go and protect the Jewish bookmakers. And then after a while, you've seen a lot of soft guys, not Jewish guys, Italian guys that weren't that tough, that weren't built like that got straightened out because they were big earners. So from my understanding growing up, and how I was taught it, all the bookmakers started out going back to the early days were majority were Jewish, and they would straighten associates out, the street toughs. And those guys very rarely had money. So that maybe they skimmed 100 or two, or they got 100 or two for making collections, or if they had to collect 3 points, they got a half a point, or they got a point and they had to turn in the other 2 points to protect the Jewish bookmakers all over the city. And that's how it was explained to me until the Italians got into it heavily, as well as we know it went over to Costa Rica, and, you know, we had the little wire rooms all over the neighborhood at the time. And then they just started straightening those guys out.
Well, the Jews started a lot of organized crime. I mean, they were
absolutely
big in bootlegging, and they did a lot of the things that eventually we took over. And like you said, it was because we protected them.
Yes.
So yeah, no, there was a lot of work done together. I had a guy on my show. You guys probably heard of him, Myron Sugarman.
Yep.
Sure.
I did a show with him.
Absolutely.
Wrote the book, The Last Jewish Gangster. I interviewed.
I wish I would. I've never met him. I'd like to meet him sometime, but
Yeah.
I read his book and I know him very well. As
Well, if you can, you'll see it's coming out. It'll be coming out in the next few weeks, the second season of my talk show on Mob TV. And he was really intriguing and educational. He said some really great things about the old days. About, he was with Meyer Lansky. He sat down and had lunch with Meyer. How many people could still say that? He went to see Cuba. He told a lot about the history. And it's funny. I asked him, one of the questions I asked him, I says, Myron, you've been in this thing a long, long time. How'd you avoid big jail time? And how is it that you never had an assault or murder or anything like that? Or I probably might have said, how you never had to kill somebody. And he says, Larry, I learned at a young age. He says, if you have to use muscle, you didn't use your brain.
Yeah.
That's the difference. That's the Jewish way of thinking.
yeah, listen.
Us, it's crack them around, get the fucking money. It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
They were.
They're the ones that taught us.
Yeah.
That you never kill nobody over money. If a guy owes you money, how's he going to pay you if you clip him?
Right.
That came from Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky was the one that put that in motion amongst the commission. We can't clip guys that owe us money because we'll never get paid.
Yeah. That's right.
And it's, what is it? The numbers racket, Dutch Schultz ran all of Harlem, was a Jewish guy. And they ran all the numbers. When I was a kid, I remember when the number rackets were ending. It was the Jewish had all of the numbers rackets. And down to the last guy that I borrowed money off of before I went into Shylock was a Jewish guy. All the Jewish guys loaned money out. I'd go, Lindenwood, people don't realize Howard Beach is 50%, 25% Italian and Irish, and 50% Jewish. So whenever you needed money, we'd walk into an Irish guy's social club, a Jewish guy's social club, or the bar the local Jewish guy was hanging out at, and he loaned money. He was still taking numbers. He'd give you, if they started paying 5-1, the Brooklyn number paid 6-1.
Yeah.
You know, they were trying to beat the lotto all those years.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
we
because
did.
they went by the
Yeah.
Brooklyn number.
Yeah, I mean they were pretty smart when it came to, all of that stuff, and they weren't
They
around
taught
too
us.
long. Yeah, I mean,
That's
and
why
they
I thank. Like, you'll always hear me praise the Jewish friends that I grew up with and the Jewish guys that I know. I don't have a bad word to say. I learned a lot from them because that's what I came up in the numbers racket. So that's what I learned from, and a lot of them were Jewish. And like I said, holding on to that last piece of Shylock was an old Jewish guy.
Yeah. And what a lot of people ask, well, not a lot of people, I've been asked, like, who's your favorite gangster of all time? Meyer Lansky's right up there. I always mention him because he made a
Absolutely.
fortune. He did things internationally, and he really didn't do any jail time. And I don't think he probably, listen, he probably dabbled with the government in different ways, especially, and Myron said it too. He said that, but it was different. They did it, and they called themselves patriots because when Hitler was doing what he was doing, and they had this communist faction coming over into our country, they were supposed to go after these guys. They asked the Jewish mob to go after them, and Meyer Lansky was in charge of that. So he's dealing with the government. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you're not supposed to do that. Like Luciano,
Right.
he worked with the
Luciano, yeah.
government.
Well, what Luciano did with Genovese is why the crime family is called the Genovese crime family, not the Luciano crime family.
If any of us did those things, we'd be killed.
Yeah, but and you also, as you know, he paid his taxes, Meyer Lansky, and as you know, if you're a legitimate guy and you never took that oath and you paid your taxes, you're supposed to call the cops. You're supposed to cooperate with the police. Those were the rules because that's what you were told. You can't harm a civilian because our people depend on us to protect them. They depend on the cops and the government to protect them. That's why they pay their taxes.
Yeah.
We don't pay ours.
Yeah. Here's another good story about Meyer Lansky that Myron told me, and it tells you a little bit about character. There's a lot out there today that he died broke, Meyer. And you think about all the money he made, like $500 million back then. How could he be broke? He said two things. He put a fortune into Cuba, and he put a fortune into Vegas with Bugsy, and that's in the movie. You should see that.
Yep.
And he said not only did he lose all that money, but he repaid all the investors. So that's huge money if you think about it.
Oh yeah, sure. The $4 million alone for the Flamingo is what? 50 million today?
How many John Gotti's, Greg Scarpas, us, how many would have paid all the investors back? Exactly.
I'm not paying the wise Larry, I wasn't paying the wise guy above me. Fuck out of here. He's gonna get a crumb. They weren't getting nothing out of me. Forget about I heard that somewhere. And he said that they learned that from Arnold Rothstein. Arnold Rothstein said that you always make sure you pay your investors back first.
Did he say that?
Because those are the guys that when you're down and out that you're gonna need to have your back. Those are the investors. Because I'm a big fan of Arnold Rothstein. I mean, I've read a lot of books about him. When a man can fix the World Series, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So
I wish it was
Arnold
around
Rothstein, yeah.
Hey. Oh, so you guys know the heist Lucchese crime family kind of led. How the hell you say it?
The Lufthansa?
Yeah, that one.
The Lufthansa?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. So
the Jimmy Burke heist.
Yeah, that one. So kind of talk about that one. I mean, that was operated by the Lucchese's, or who was all affiliated. There was some.
The airport belonged to everybody. It's just that Jimmy was friends with all crime families. Vinny Ashara was a Bonanno captain. His father was a Bonanno boss, and that was probably one of Jimmy Burke's closest friends. And probably the only guys that didn't get clipped were guys outside the Lucchese family on that heist.
Shit, I think he did take out some associates.
Yeah, he killed them.
Yeah, Lucchese guys.
Yeah,
no other crime family guys.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Who was the guy that was the inside connection? That he's the one that knew Henry Hill, right?
Yeah.
Right.
What the
Lefferts
hell?
Boulevard, Roberts Lounge on Lefferts Boulevard, where my crew used to hang out.
Right, but
They used to hang out at Roberts Lounge. He was a security guard. He worked the night shift at the Lufthansa, and he was saying supposedly for like a year going on, you got to see what's coming in and out of here on this night shift.
Yeah,
jewelry,
like once a month.
unguarded money.
That's how they got the score. Because
and he brought it to Jimmy.
They could have went to somebody around John. They could have went to somebody else, and then you said, Anybody.
Absolutely.
But they went to him, and they put the score together, did it, and that was it. And they would have to.
I mean, everybody got theirs. The way they made it seem in that movie. And I mean, I can tell you, I grew up on 101st Avenue, from Drew Street to 76th Street, and my aunt was good friends with Johnny Roast Beef's wife. They were never found. My aunt thought she went until the day my aunt died. They lived on 78th Street, actually across the street from where Jojo Carrazzo's father moved, who was a really nice guy. He used to live on 78th Street off 101st Avenue. She actually lived right across the street. And my aunt was very good friends with her. And she happened to be Johnny Roast Beef's wife, fiance, whatever she was at the time. And one day they just picked up and left. Her clothes were still there. They thought they went to the witness protection or whatever it was back then. Because as you all know, Jimmy Burke never went away and did Fed time. He died in state prison. He never did a day for the Lufthansa heist.
No, he
got him on with the murders. They recharged him for what they did in Florida. He did that Fed time. But other than that, when he died just, what was it, 10, 15 years ago, of stomach cancer, he died in the state prison in upstate New York.
Yeah, and I think it was over some rigging college numbers or some shit.
Well, no, that's not why he got life. There was a few murders behind that. But they fixed that college basketball game where they had the whole team in on it. It was kind of like what Arnold Rothstein did with the Black Sox. The whole team was in on it, and the refs.
Damn.
Yeah,
so that's what they
used to fix. They fixed horse races like that. Me growing up on Aqueduct and Belmont, where every jockey in the race was in on it. I mean, I've seen that growing up my whole life.
Damn. So I mean, but ultimately with that heist, they ended up he wanted to keep all the money, so he wanted to take out everyone. Is that?
That's another story by Henry. Wasn't even in on the heist. That's why he couldn't testify to it when he put everybody in jail. The guy that got hurt the most, who died of a heart attack on the track in Texas, was Paul Vario. That's the only person that was close to Henry Hill, and nobody else was that close to Henry Hill. DeSimone already disappeared. Jimmy Burke already did that Fed time with him over the drugs and the attempted murder, and he didn't have to spend the day. There was some old murder beefs. They got Jimmy on. He went to trial. He blew trial. He wound up getting natural life in the state. But other than that, from my understanding, if you actually could go listen to the tapes, Vinny Savage is actually complaining about the $500,000 he got from the score. And Vinny Savage was a guy on the outside. He just happened to be very good friends with Jimmy Burke. And then there was I can say names because he's dead. Mike DeVita was a Lucchese Wise guy who got straightened out later in life, whose brother set me up. Dino put me away for 2 years. He was involved in that. There's certain guys that open junkyards. That one of them is still alive today. The other one passed away. The guys got their end. You know what I mean? The guys that didn't were the Johnny Roast Beefs, the Frankie Carbones, the guys that they thought were going to be no good. Guy like Stax, who left the truck in the middle of nowhere with his prints on it. They didn't whack everybody. Jimmy was going to get 50% of that money. They cleared $8 million, and the guy who got the jewelry was from East New York. Larry, you probably know them, from the Eastern Parkway Boys, and he's the one that actually got all the jewelry from the Lufthansa and almost got to keep all of it because Jimmy never even came around for the money because he was that generous. He made that kind of money, Jimmy. So what you see in that is Henry's take on it, and Henry really didn't know that much because if he did, he would have put a lot more people away on that Lufthansa. He didn't even truly know all the guys that were involved in it. He knew that the security guard came into Robert's Lounge, got drunk, and had a big mouth, and that all the guys that hung out at Robert's Lounge on Levitt's Boulevard were going to play some kind of part in it, who was going to be a lookout. Because you got to remember, when they went in there, I think they tied up like 15, 20 people. There was a lot of people that were in there when they went in there. So they needed guys. And from my understanding, it went smooth. They told everybody, he's got nothing to worry about. Nobody's going to get hurt. Do what you're told. Go in the next room. Nobody got clipped. Nobody got hurt. There were civilians in there, meaning during the heist. And, I think it was 3 hours, 4 hours. And they told the person, wait about 2 hours and then report it. They were already long gone upstate, changed, went on the lam, got rid of the money, dropped the jewelry off in East New York. It was very well planned. Everybody was in on it. And everybody who was supposed to be taken care of was taken care of because the airport the 5 families each had a piece of the airport. So you couldn't just walk into the airport and take what you wanted, even though Jimmy Burke was probably the most feared guy on the street at the time.
Any thoughts on that, Larry?
Well, he said it very well. I don't really know a lot about the story other than what I saw in the movie, to be totally honest. And the newspapers. I remember reading about it, but everything you said makes a lot of sense, especially that Henry didn't hurt them on that. And I didn't know that Jimmy Burke was that generous and all of that. I'm not arguing that point either. So no, I think he said it well.
Yeah. Well, you guys have any other topics you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Well, I'm going to fix this. I'm sorry.
No, go
I'm
ahead.
going to make sure the voice stays good. There we go. Well, I started a second book. It's funny you ask. And I've already got 2 places that want it first. And I started doing it during the pandemic. It's all about the gambling world. I was very much involved in that many years ago. I'm still a consultant for some offshore places in Costa Rica. And I built up a real big business. I was known as the Lefty Rosenthal of the Colombo family for quite some time. And so I wrote a book on all the various characters you meet, all the different, and I weaved it into a story based on a lot of true stuff, but all different names. I'm going to lower this thing. It's based on actual events, but like I said, I just changed a lot of names and things like that. It's minor stuff. It's gambling. It's program. I'm not going to cause any problems for anybody, but just the same, I didn't think I should put any real names in. Some of them you may recognize just from the closeness of the name, or if I describe a person, a 5'2" underboss, you know who I'm talking about. No, but he was a powerhouse. I don't care how tall he was. So stuff like that. So I'm working on that. We're working on a script in several places for the life, and I've got good vibes. I get good news. I got Joe Paletto, who's a producer that's also a very good friend now, and he's got the Mob TV station up and running. It's in its infancy still. It's only a year old. He's adding thriller and conspiracy TV to Plex. You can find this all on Plex. Our next season of the talk show that I did should be coming out within a few weeks. The schedules are up now, so that'll be, and I'll probably do a 3rd season along the way. I have somebody writing a play about the life. That's another avenue we can go. And the guy's name's Richard Haas. He's a fantastic writer. He's a little bit of a quirky type of guy, that genius, borderline nut, And he's doing a great job with the script. And it's for a play. You know what I mean? So it's a different thing. So we have an opportunity for a play or a TV series or a movie. They're all in the works. It's very difficult, but I like I said, I'm really confident, especially after the call I got today. So hopefully,
good. It's good to hear.
But thanks for asking.
Good to hear.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great story. I mean, it's so visual of all the tentacles or the components of what went into it. Like, coming from a normal family, all right, not really involved with the mob. I had an uncle who was, but he kept us away from it. Then meeting this woman, having an affair, finding out who it was, now getting into the life. He likes me. He okays it. And now he starts training me to be a little him, another Greg. So that's intriguing. Nick Pileggi said it. He said, you were seduced twice, once by the wife and then by Greg. It's true. It's easy to be seduced into this life. Then,
well, you also know there's no Colombo movies out. True life Colombo story. Yeah. I'm waiting for your book to come out.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. So, one of the other things that's being worked on is the Colombo Wars. Because like I said, we've been at war forever. So that's a good story within itself. But to wrap up the book, and then don't forget, as you go on into my story, at some point, whether it's a series or a movie, it's going to be thrust on the viewers that the guy that took me into this is an informant for 30 years. And he has a corrupt agent as a partner. So it just never seems to end, So it is, and all of that stuff to actually see on the screen, a little sex, a little violence, it's good, Mm-hmm. So, I'm hoping, like I said, sooner than later, it really, and that's a good point you said about the Colombos. There really hasn't been anything.
No, not that you've seen.
If you run everything through the time frame, because I'm big on the history stuff, and you Brooklyn guys had it for so long, you got Gus Farage is ending, and the Colombo Wars are starting. The second. Now this is the second war.
Right.
This is the second war starting. Then you got Roy DeMeo and them at the tail end, where his own guys set him up. They get split up, get put with the Lucchese family. So like
Right.
you got all these Brooklyn guys, and then you got Bat Avenue, which is falling apart. Spiro's guys are all
Yeah.
coming on him in the Bonanno family. The Gambino's guy gets shot, setting up Gus Farrat, and that's a whole big sit down for that. So like, and then you throw in the Colombo Wars. There's so much that Netflix and Hulu, all these streaming stations now, since nothing's in the movies anymore, got so much to work with. If they get the right consulting on these films, you get these Once Upon a Time in Brooklyn and all these other reject movies that these guys make. That it's like these guys grow up and live in these neighborhoods, and these movies are awful. When when there's 1,000 guys on the street that can tell them what happened, what went on.
You're right. And the other thing is, very few can pull off the acting. You know, you got De Niro and Pacino. Even Pacino's a little, you know, he's. I can't.
Well, I'm not a fan of De Niro. I think De Niro's terrible. That's me. I know you like him. You work with him.
Listen, I did, but my feelings have nothing to do with business.
No, I just don't think that he can act like an Italian. You know, to me, his greatest performance ever. To me, his greatest performance ever was Cape Fear. That's it, hands down.
I told him his two best movies to me was Cape Fear, his performance, and Deer Hunter.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree with you. But the other ones, he got so well known, and just his ways, he started playing it. He was great in The Godfather. He played a good Don Corleone.
Yeah, I mean, but we can't talk about 50 years ago. That's different today.
But still, you know.
I just don't think he has that anymore. Whenever I see him act like he's Italian, I take it as analyze this. I take him as a comedian.
Right.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
But I'm saying,
I like the Mike Madsons. I like the Mike Madsons. There's Barry Pepper when he played in that retarded movie, Knock Around Guys. You got a lot of these young guys that are a lot older. Ed Burns from Massapequa loves playing a gangster. You get that guy to play a nice, tall Italian guy. Like, there's a lot of guys that can really pull these roles off.
I'm saying, that's what I say. Pacino, even Pesci, these guys are too old. And I think that sort of slowed mine up a little bit because I was in the house with Scorsese, De Niro, Pileggi, all these guys. They loved it. Pileggi said you wrote a classic. De Niro said it's terrific book, terrific. He just gives it. But I think when they analyze this, he said, who do I play? I can't be Larry, who's going to be the main role. I can't be Linda, so it's less appealing. So now you're right. You got to hit the right person to play a young Larry and then an older Larry. You got to get a nice, hot, young Italian girl. Like the perfect one years ago would have been Marissa Tomei. She wouldn't have even had to act.
Right.
But going back to what you said about these movies that are coming out that are bad, the problem is the acting. They're insulting. They overact. They talk
insulting.
I guess I'm always gonna have a bit of a Brooklyn accent, but they insult. It's insulting.
Do you ever see the way they dress?
Yeah.
They got this series going on in Brooklyn now, and these guys all come from Brooklyn. They get dressed like they get dressed in the dark, like there's no lights in their house. Yeah. I'm like, who brought these guys up? Who took them shopping? I never walked out of my house. Nobody in my whole crew ever walked out of our houses with dirty shoes on.
Right.
We went home, we got changed, we put suits on, we went out at night. Right. You know what I mean? I see guys, they walking into sit downs in clubs with tank tops and work jackets on and all these retarded shows they got out now. And these guys claim they're from the neighborhood. They're
catering to a different viewer. They're catering to the younger kids that are growing up and want to think they're going to be part of something like that. More gangs or gangster with an A. Hip hop. They bring a lot of hip hop in. And the woke stuff, they seem to have to find a way into every movie. So, a mob movie can't have that. Mob movie gotta be what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, I really think you got definitely an interesting story. I've had you come on the show so many times to tell it, and I think you're right. I mean, you got everything a movie needs to work, and you have every key part of that. So hopefully, they can find the right actors and someone will pick up the movie. I mean, it's got to be done. There's not no Colombo movies out like Hootie said.
I think it's going to happen. I really do. I always say what happens is you need the stars to align. Things have to be right. Like you said, Netflix, Hulu, they're all looking for stuff, but they're all working on things on a daily basis too. When do you get squeezed in? When is whoever is going to play? When is Ruffalo or Bobby Cannavale going to not be busy to step in and take the lead role? Because they're all busy doing the streaming stuff.
Right.
But you're right. You hit it on the head. There's two guys that I'm very tight with now. Is Madsen and Armand Asante. Those two guys,
amazing,
older guys. They could play like a Greg, a Scappy, Persico.
Well,
I thought
De Niro could have played the older Craig, but I don't think he just wants that small part. You know what I mean? I always remember seeing Frankie Valli during the Jersey Boys and saying he'd be the perfect little Vic. I was like, this guy would be the player. Little Vic's gonna live forever. This guy's looked like Little Vic looked 70 when he was on the street when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I picked the guys out here and there, that kind of thing. But Madsen and Amad Asante, hands down, the guy's one of my favorite actors of all time.
Great guy, a great guy. Really, very great. And he was very helpful with me.
Garcia. Get Andy Garcia to look a little younger when they shave the beard, they clean him up. Yeah. The guy he actually played Skinny Dom. People don't know that he was Skinny Dom in the movie, the Romeo and Juliet murders.
Oh,
he was skinny. What did you ever see Andy Garcia? They made a movie about the hit that went down about the husband and wife that were robbing all the social clubs in Ozone Park.
Oh, yeah, I remember the movie.
They made a movie about that, and Andy Garcia plays the boss, where in all actuality, it was Skinny Dom who says, we got to find these guys, because that's when they robbed Vinny Sarah, and then it was between the Gambinos and the Bananas who could get there first.
Yeah,
so that was like a whole new thing.
Movie. I want to watch it again now that you said that. But yeah, you know who would have played a good Junior person though, and it would have been. See, the thing with Junior, he's not going to be a big part of the movie because he's always in jail. But we had to go visit him, so there'd be a lot of going to the prison to get direction for the war, get who's going to get brought up, who's going to get made, who's going to, these things that are going on that he has to give the final say so. And I thought De Niro, because of the right age, cut his hair down, put the glasses on, he could have done that.
Yeah, Junior's been around forever.
And he's got
right. How old? He was 70 during the Windows trial, right? How old was Junior during the Windows trial?
He died in his mid-80s. So
damn. So he made it.
Oh, I thought he made it to his 90s.
I don't think
I just always remember seeing pictures of him in the garden. Remember he had that garden? He was ripped up, no shirt on.
He looked older, but he had an older appearance. Even Greg
Scarpa,
the boss, my boss.
Yeah.
He always looked older. I never seen him look young. Not that he looked bad, but like Greg Jr., I remember him when he was a kid. I remember him looking, now I know him now. But Greg always looked the same. When I saw pictures of him when he was 35, he had the mustache, the same receding hair, the same miserable look, the mean look. 10 years
well, it's
later,
funny.
When I met him at 50, he looked the same. The only time he changed is when he got the AIDS, obviously. Then he lost his hair.
Well, that was a difference. I remember seeing Greg Sr. He was heavy, and he had a mustache, which I couldn't believe because nobody was allowed to have a mustache back then.
Well, I'll tell you why after you're done.
And then the next time I seen him, he's walking out of court in a Sergio Tacchini sweatsuit, skinny, looked taller, thinner hair, and he's doing the interview as he's walking.
Yeah.
So that was the before and after that I got to see.
Well, the one time he had a mustache, and it seemed that became an infamous picture. So everybody thinks he always had a mustache. But him and two other guys, they're both gone now, so I can mention them, Joe Brewster and Bobby Zambotti, went down to Florida with him. They had to clip somebody. So he said everybody grow a thick mustache because the first thing everybody's going to say is the shooters had mustaches. And they just shaved them when they got home. So that was their disguise. And a funny part of the story was that after they got the guy, they went onto the beach and they threw the gun out in the ocean. They saw a kid scuba diving right down there where the gun was. They said, wait to make sure the kid didn't see it. Yeah.
Oh, man.
that. I never forget that story. But anyway, that's why he had that mustache. I never saw him with a mustache the whole time I was with him. That was before my time.
Yeah.
And and we weren't allowed. If I had the Don Johnson thing going on back in the 80s with a little scruff,
you're sent home.
You got no money for
what happened?
Go home and shave.
Well, you guys have any other topics you want to talk about before we wrap up?
We could save it for the next one. I mean, because we could.
There's always more. There's always more, and I, it's a pleasure whenever you got Larry on. So
I appreciate you for that. I enjoy your company.
Oh yeah,
just don't leave me hanging this season. You left me hanging last season. I waited for you in West Hampton. Let's see. I will host you sometime this year in 2023.
I hope so.
All right.
Where can the people find you guys? Go ahead and put yours out there, Larry, and then Hootie.
Well, I'm real quick, guys. I haven't made a video in about 10 months. I got a big legal case going on. It should be wrapping up soon. I'll be back full-fledged making videos. I'm traveling up and down the South, going in and out of there's big investments in sports cards right now and sports memorabilia that I'm getting into. As you all know, Gene got, kicked into Florida. He's got 2 years left on his parole. So I can't be making any videos with him going forward. And then just, I'm hoping to have you on again, Larry, as soon as my season gets started, if you're available. And that's it for me right now.
Okay. What about you, Larry?
Well, I've got, I'm still working with some very, very top-end script writers for the movie or a TV series. I have somebody also writing a play for Broadway or off-Broadway. My book is still selling very well, thank God. You can get that at www.larrymazza-thelife.com. And last but not least, my talk show is still on Mob TV. The second season's coming out in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully right after that, we'll film the third season. So everything's going
Two more things, Larry, so I can know. I got the problem with YouTube. Whenever I get on the bike or I'm in the gym, it shuts off because it clears the screen. Your channel, you said, is it anywhere else besides YouTube?
No, it's Plex TV. It's a regular streaming. It's like Hulu.
So I have Plex downloaded. Okay, go to Plex. So that's the only channel it's on is Plex.
That's it. Right now, we're going to eventually put it onto YouTube also, but we don't want to take away from the growth of the station. The actual.
Okay.
So it probably another 6 months or so when it gets more distribution. But it's on Plex. It's called Mob TV. If you scroll along the bottom, you'll see The Life with Larry Mazza. We had about 16 shows. We got another 10 coming out.
Great.
Hopefully.
Now, who's running it, Larry? Who's running Mob TV?
Well, the two main partners are Joe Paletto and Terry Winter. So
Terry Winter.
Yeah, he's a big writer. You know who that is.
Yeah, I know Terry Winter very well. Yeah, I don't know him personally, but he writes a lot of movies.
So there's two other people, tech, and I'm the fifth person listed as the mob consultant for Mob TV. So
great.
There's 5 people on the board, but Joe Paletto is the one that started Comedy Central for HBO many years ago.
Yes.
And going strong. So
yes. He's got money. He's got money long like train smoke, Larry. And if you can't tell him that, I'll say it for you.
All right.
But listen, and also remember what you told me. Remember what you told me, Larry, that Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro both knew who hit Joe Gallo, but because they made a promise to the family, that's why they made the book the way they did. So let's not forget that about Goodfellas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Scorsese knew a lot of the players and a lot of what went down in Goodfellas, but out of respect for the author, he made the book closest to the movie as he could, as he did with The Irishman, because I was very disappointed with The Irishman until me and you had that conversation off camera, and you told me what they both said to you, and then I have to have a different respect for it then. So thank you for that as well.
No, thank you. I hope when they do my book, they go by the book.
Be sure to check out Larry's book here.
Just don't want them to throw the book at you.
Larry's book. Right. Check it out.
Thank you.
It's a really good story.
All right. Listen, everybody stay safe. Take care.